Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brief demonstration of the Scoro software. My name is Bradley Callender. I am one of the solutions engineers based out of New York City. What do I do? My job is to work day to day with potential clients of Scoro to try and figure out if the software might be a good fit for them and how potentially we might be able to solve some of their needs when it comes to building efficiencies around your organization, specifically when it comes to maximizing profit when it comes to your project-based work. So what is my goal today? My goal today is to give you a demonstration of the Scoro software focused specifically on the consultants or consultancy use case. This is definitely one of the largest subgroups of clients that we have at Scoro. We focus very heavily on the professional services space, and consultants fall very squarely within that. And my goal here is just to give you kind of a high level of understanding of some of the problems we've run into in the past. This is by no means everything that Scoro can do for you, and every use case is a little different. So if you do find that this demonstration, resonates with some of the problems that you're running into, please do reach out and we'd be more than happy to see if we might be a strong fit and potentially schedule a more customized demo to meet your specific needs. So before I jump into it, I realize that some of you may be familiar with what Scoro is, but just at a very high level, Scoro is an end-to-end work management software. Some people might use the term professional services automation tool. The general gist of it is that we really are a tool designed for professional services to maximize the work that they deliver. So these are going to be professionals that primarily sell their time. And the main goal that we have is to provide efficiencies with some of the gaps that we've run into in that space, notably tying that time and that cost of delivering time to the actual revenue that you earn. Whether that be the sort of day-to-day tasking of actually tracking that work, whether that be the scheduling out of that work, whether that be the resourcing planning or the actual tracking of profits on that work. We do want to provide a kind of one location for you to kind of understand what's going on in that space and what's going on in these projects, and not deal with a lot of the manual processes or inefficient processes that so many people in the consulting space do run into. So let's go ahead and hop into it. I do have a couple agenda items here, and these are really just the main items I do want to cover. When we are kind of discussing Scoro, this is just a couple modules. Once again, not holistic. It's just a few things that we've run into in the space. So the first is going to be tracking active projects. Just as it sounds, this is going to be making sure we can look at any engagement that your organization may be working with and get every detail that might be necessary in real time. This is going to be a theme that I'm going to continue to kind of reiterate and really lock in, is the fact that because Scoro is this end-to-end platform, you get all this information in real time. So when you look at a project, you see what you've invoiced, you see what your costs have been, you see what the burn down is, you see where the Gantt chart is, right? All of that is in one simple, easy to understand place. The second one is going to be bills and expenses. So these are going to be external costs, right? A lot of consultants do work on some sort of time and material model, or if they don't, they just have external costs they need to track on their projects. This could come in the form of a freelancer or a subcontractor that you are working with on a specific project. This could also come in the form of travel expenses or any sort of pre-planned purchases that may have been made with the form of a PO or something like that. Scoro can handle all these eventualities and can run it through the project. The next is going to be a forecasting view, and this kind of comes in two parts. One is going to be revenue forecasting and kind of understanding future earned revenue, future recognizable revenue here at Scoro and or in your organization. And the goal of that is to make it so you have a lot more consistency, right? I mean, a lot of consultants don't have any sort of revenue forecast, or it's very, very rough. And it leads to decisions being made that maybe shouldn't be made, or maybe you have apprehension about decisions because you don't know what money's coming down the pipe, and you don't know if you can afford that new hire. You don't know if you can afford that new office, whatever it might be. Having a strong forecast of your projects is really, really high value add. And the last is sort of a summation of everything in Scoro. And this is dashboards. Everybody knows what dashboards are, but just once again, because we have all the information here in Scoro, the dashboards are that much more powerful, right? They're bringing information from that many more places. So let's go ahead and hop into a brief little case study. And once again, as a solutions engineer, what I do every day is work with clients like you. I work with prospects like you, and I help people understand or kind of explore if Scoro might be a strong fit. And it isn't, isn't a perfect fit for everybody, of course, right? Everyone's got their own needs. But in this case study, I'm just going to go and highlight some of the really recurring themes that I see in the consultant use case. And if these resonate with you, great. If they don't, we still might be a fit. We might not. It's totally fine. But hopefully this is something that you guys can all kind of see as a space that might make sense. So let's go ahead and hop into it. So some of the common issues are trying to understand the burn up / burn down of a project. So the actual budget of a project is highly delayed. Now, this might be because this is done in spreadsheets and reports are run once a week, once a month, once a quarter, where you go in and you plug in all the time entries that you've made and you plug that against some sort of cost sheet, and then you kind of understand, okay, we budgeted 50 grand for this project and we've worked through 35 grand, right? Okay. So therefore we've worked through, 7/10 of our project budget. And that delay can sometimes cause a lot of issues, right? It might be that you can't adjust in time, right? It might be if you worked on sort of a fixed scope project or a fixed, fixed price project that you're over servicing, right? You may have only delivered 25% of what you wanted to deliver, and you're already gone through 70% of your costs. That's not good. It might be because you are using a more expensive resource, right? You have someone senior working on something that maybe someone junior should have delivered. Maybe that you spent way too much time at the beginning of the project. All these things are things that you need to be able to see quickly in order to make better decisions about how a project health should go and what changes need to be made. Maybe you need to charge your client more. Maybe you need to work faster, or maybe you just need to eat some costs and you need to be prepared for that. So all of that does tie into the use of the burn up, burn down, and that real-time feedback is important. The second one, this goes into the bill's expenses. External costs are separate from the billing function and time. So, if you have an external budget, right, for freelancers, for purchases, that might not live where the time entries are, right? That might not live where people are actually tracking their progress against projects. So that can also cause friction, have not clear understanding of where a budget's at. And then the last one is poor forecasting utilization, right? Maybe you're forecasting in an independent space. You don't have a feedback loop between actual delivery times and your forecast and your utilization. This is very, very common. So, you thought that Johnny would be delivering project A over here, 10 hours a day this week and next week. However, you've just learned that project A actually has to get pushed back a week, right? So you need to update that timeline. And that doesn't necessarily translate to the forecast, right? These things live in separate places. So that feedback loop is not great. Now, this ties into a lot of the problems that we run into where people end up overutilized, underutilized, projects aren't getting delivered on time. In some cases, it leads to over servicing because people worked more than they intended to on a specific project. All these sorts of things are really symptoms or results from what happens when you basically don't have a good feedback between your forecast and the actual work you're doing. So this is going to be another common issue that we run into in the consultancy world. So let's go ahead and jump into each of these one by one. So project visibility, and in this case, I'm going to go ahead and jump into the Scoro software, I promise. Understanding of how quickly your projects are burning up, burning down. So let me go ahead and jump into the screen here, excuse me. Now, welcome to Scoro. For those of you who haven't seen this, you haven't done a trial, this is one of the first screens that you see in Scoro, as we are kind of a project-centric spot. You can see that projects are really front and center. In this particular use case, you'll see that we've got a series of projects with some details pulled out. Some of these might be the amount of hours we've burned through. Some of these might be the active budget of that project. In this case, they're organized by client. The real goal of this list view is to give you that kind of quick, easy understanding of what's going on in your project environment, where your budgets are at, how many hours you've burned down. This is by no means all the information that you want to be able to see. However, you can see it in a centralized spot and look at it before you click into any one of these projects. This is very value add if you do have that sort of decentralized problem I was describing before. So let me go ahead and jump into one of these. In this case, I'm going to do this project alpha flow right here. And in this project, I do want to jump real quick into the actual burn down of this particular project. Before I jump into that, we're just going to look at some of the summary and piece of information that we might want to understand. For example, we've worked through 42% of our hours, we've earned so much revenue, we've gotten certain tasks in progress, right? But in this particular case, we do want to look at the actual burn up chart of this particular project. And from here, we can see whatever we budgeted, the number of hours, 50 in this particular case. And the dark blue is going to show us our actuals, right? These are the actual time entries that we've been able to track against this project, which in this case is actually well under budget, right? We're significantly under that sort of blue line, which is kind of the perfect world of what's been planned. And we actually have a lot more work to do in order to deliver that work. And if this project is 80% done, great, that might be in a good spot. But if it isn't, we need to understand exactly how much wiggle room we have in order to kind of work through that project. This view also has a bit of a forecast. So you'll notice that we actually are going to end up via this sort of dotted line forecast a little above our budget. What's the reasoning behind that? That might be that we over-delivered on one task or one deliverable on the project. It might be that a resource that wasn't assigned actually did some work on this particular project. All of these things add up to lead to a forecast that we hope is accurate to give you a better sense for where you're going to be potentially and potentially how we can make adjustments in order to get to that budgetary line, or ideally, if it's fixed scope underneath that budgetary line, we could increase your kind of profit margin. We can also break down these numbers based on sort of a role-based criteria. This is very common in the consultancy space. I don't doubt that a good number of you, if not the majority of you, do price out your services based on sort of a role-based hourly rate. We charge our partners out at this number, we charge our junior partners out at this number, we charge our associates or our project managers, whatever, right? And in this case, you can see each of these is going to have a budgetary number, all of which will have an actuals in the dark blue, and then a forecast as far as where we think they're going to be. And in some of these, you'll see that the red is indicating that that role is going over, right? Our strategy expert is sort of the squeaky wheel in this particular case. They're the ones who have been going over and delivering too much work against this project in order to cause that budget to get off. And all of this ties again into some of these major issues that we run into with tracking burn up and burn down charts. And this real-time delivery is how Scoro solves that problem. Okay, so we kind of answered that sort of key problem around burn up and burn down. While we're looking at the project list view, a couple other things I wanted to highlight. One is going to be a key sort of task view or Gantt view to understand the timeline for all the tasks that we are delivering and how we're working through those. Another might be just a list of all the financial objects that are associated with the project, right? What invoices have been sent out? Are they overdue, as we're seeing in this particular case? How did we quote this out? How did we build the budget? All of these are centralized in one place. You don't need to go to different folders. You don't need to look at different tools. Scoro is really bringing this all together. So let's go ahead and hop back real quick to this slideshow here, understanding how quickly project budgets are burning down. Once again, the project view solves that problem. And once this real-time feedback is how we really get the value to you. And now I got a nice little image so you kind of remember what it looks like. Okie dokie, let's go ahead and jump into the next problem set that we run into. This is going to be bills and expenses. Now I will go ahead and hop back into my view, and I'm actually going to go to a different project just because I have this one prepped. And the first thing I want to highlight is how we actually think about budgets in Scoro. So in this case, we are looking at the sort of profit and loss section of the budget. And you'll notice that we have a certain number that we quoted, and then we have a certain actual. So the certain number we quoted is what we're planning on invoice or what we plan to earn. Now in a fixed scope model, this might be exactly what we invoice, or if it's a time and material, this might be more like an estimate. However, this is going to be what our target is. And costs are actually going to be broken up into two sections. One is going to be bills and expenses, or something that we might refer to as external costs in Scoro. Once again, this is going to be your freelancers, your subcontractors, your travel expenses, any other purchases that might be made, and then your labor costs. And this comes in the form of time entries in Scoro. So anytime anyone tracks time in Scoro, their costs are basically calculated against a particular project that they're associated with. So this bills and expenses is really what's most important. In the last slide, I did show you how finances are tracked. And notably, bills and expenses are sections that can get placed in. So if you do have a bill that you want to associate with a particular project, you can either manually create it within this particular section, or you can leverage one of our many accounting tool integrations in order to actually flow these bills between the systems. The most notable ones are going to be Xero, QuickBooks Online, Sage Intacct Suite, and then as well Exact Online. And the main goal here is that we do have the ability to take the actual invoice or the bill that you're receiving from a client and associate it with a project budget so you can track it in that profit section that I was just showing you. But just to show you for the purpose of this demonstration, I'm going to show you the kind of easiest way to build one of these. Apologies, I clicked the wrong button. You can come to our quote here, and you can see within this budget, we have a certain amount that we have budgeted out for freelancer design, miscellaneous materials, and travel. And if I wanted to build a bill for the freelancer that is billing us at a rate of $7,000 a piece, I'm going to go ahead and use the data here to create a bill. And from this, we can go ahead and take the information and flow it all the way through to a supplier that comes from our CRM. This could be the freelancer, and create a reference for a bill of $7,000. And what this is basically doing is it's telling the system that we have a cost of $7,000 that has been billed to us for this particular project. So that when I come into Project Echo and we look back at that sort of profit and loss section, or the profit section, you'll see we've incurred an additional 7,000 euros cost in this particular case. Now, the integration can make that process even more fluid, but I did want to highlight how we do have the ability to basically take these sort of external costs, which are, once again, often living in spreadsheets. Usually the accounting department is handling this in many organizations, right? Which might not even be an in-house accounting department. So the delay between those external costs is quite significant, and we don't really have a realistic view of where our profitability or where our actual budget burn down is at. So that is sort of the value add of that expenses, those bills and expenses, and how those basically are a little bit more efficient in the Scoro suite and this sort of all-in-one tool. So just to quickly summarize, right? Consultants are often used to build expenses to track external costs. Basically, the project profit and the quota versus actual table allows you to track these costs against the budget. And that reminds me, I forgot to show you the secondary part of this profit and loss, which is basically a breakdown of that profit statement in order for you to see, for example, this freelancer design cost is broken up into certain sections, and we can even see where that cost has been incurred. So we had that budget of 7,000, we've incurred 7,000 of it, so we can actually compare that to what our budgeted numbers were. And this works for both internal cost tracking, but also external cost tracking. Apologies for that. I forgot that very important piece. So once again, with the ability to track these against the budget, creates an even flow. Hopefully that'll be value add for your organization if you do have external costs as part of your project budgets. So the next one, which in my opinion is one of the most valuable adds that you do get from Scoro, is the ability to forecast future state of projects from both a revenue and sort of a resource or utilization perspective. So let me go ahead and hop back in here, and we're going to come to our reporting page. And I want to show you two key reports. One is going to be this revenue report, and this is a new feature in Scoro. It's something that we're very happy with. And this is effectively an aggregation of all the projects you have in Scoro, as well as the quotes you have in Scoro, so future business you have in Scoro. And basically, it'll show you a sort of understanding of when you can expect certain business to get recognized, the certain revenue to get recognized. So if you have a project that's worth 100,000 euros, but you are delivering it over 4 months, you aren't necessarily earning all of that revenue in the first month, right? You may need to split it up over quarter, right? Or maybe 50, 10, 20, 20, right? You need to be able to have the customization to understand when that work is actually going to occur and when you can expect that money to actually be earned. And this report is effectively doing that for you. It's taking all the projects, all the tasks and deliverables that you have forecasted out, and it's building a report for you. In this particular case, we can see what we expect to earn in January, what we've got in store for February, March, April, May. And you may notice these light blue ones. Those are basically taking into account future stated work. So these are going to be quotes that live in your pipeline. This goes into our CRM tool, which I'm not going to go super in depth here, but basically this is work that you expect to come in, but is not 100% signed yet. And we want to be able to weight that into your forecast as well. And we can go ahead and leverage a a weighted value for that. So if it's something that we're 80% valuable, we can multiply by 80%, right, in order to make sure the forecast is a little bit more accurate based on the actual pipeline that you're working with. If we scroll down, we can actually see how all these numbers are broken up. So just to kind of reiterate the sort of steady state or case study that we're often working with, many consultants don't have anything like this. If you do have something like this, it might be kind of rough. It might be a spreadsheet that you run once a month, maybe once a quarter. You might not be very confident about the accuracy of it, right? It's something that you don't have a real-time feedback loop on. It might be something that is based on like super high level numbers, right? Not the actual tasks that people are ultimately doing and the actuals that you might actually be working with. It might be just based on sort of this high level quoting number. So really, Scoro does give you a ton more visibility and granularity when it comes to this revenue forecast, which is super valuable for any organization that's trying to grow, that's trying to project out their costs if they're thinking about hiring or changing major costs in some way, or just helping them understand their new business development and when they need to do pushes for projects to start. So hopefully the value is seen here. The secondary piece I did want to show is going to be on the more resourcing side, which is going to be this utilization report. And now this is sort of the resourcing side of the future view. And this is, I think, the prettiest report in Scoro. But basically, this is aggregating all the information that we have in Scoro from tasks and what people are doing and kind of presenting in a very pretty view. In this case, we can kind of see the 4 users that we have and how much work we expect them to do in the next couple of weeks, right? Pretty intuitively, green is good, white is not enough work, and red is bad, right? Red means that they're overutilized. And if I hover over Kevin, I can see that the majority of that is coming in the form of this Delta project as far as where he's ultimately getting overutilized and where we maybe need to make some changes. It's a very filterable space, but the ultimate goal here is to give you a really accurate view of who's going to be busy when, who may be overutilized, underutilized. And just like everything I've said, I told you I was going to keep saying it, it's all real time, right? When task deadline or when task timelines change, this report changes. It is the same function. You don't need to worry about that delay between where you're forecasting, which might be in a tool, it might be in a spreadsheet, and where you're delivering the work. This might be in some sort of task management tool, like an Asana or a Monday or any of the number. There's great tools out there, but they often have a disconnect from where you're actually forecasting out the availability of your employees. And this is the problem that Scoro solves. Okay. Amazing. So the last thing I did want to go over, and let me jump back to my presentation real quick. Lack of overstate or future state of projects, utilization and revenue report. We could just went through this, but basically this all-in-one allows you to have a better sense for where you're going to be, not just where you currently are. And here's a nice little pretty picture so you can see it again. So the last thing is going to be dashboards, and I don't need to spend too much time here. We all know what dashboards are, but I do want to go ahead and show you some examples of them in Scoro. I think the most notable one, excuse me, is going to be this sort of CEO, COO dashboard. And this is just an example of all the information that we might want to pull in, right? I told you it's an all-in-one tool. We got invoice, we got costs, we've got timesheets, right? And you can really see this here. We're looking at pipeline information. We're looking at how my team is spending our time. We're looking at what kind of profits we made in the last period. We look at what kind of invoices may be outstanding. All of these are details that you currently have to look in a lot of different places to see, a lot of different places to understand. Scoro centralizes all of these dashboards in a way that's really, really easy to understand, and it will allow kind of the more exact C-suite level, VP level people to not need to go in the nitty-gritty of projects and use these dashboards to leverage. Now, these can also be done on a more individual level. Like I might look at a specialist, or actually I'm going to look at an account manager dashboard here, where we can see some of the stuff that the team might be more interested in, right? They might be looking at the WIP for their individual team, right? How much have we earned for our team? What's active? Who's available? All these things that are more customizable to different users. These dashboards are preset here, but they're by no means, they're very configurable, right? These are not the dashboards that you need to use in Scoro. And I wanted to give you guys an understanding of some of the widgets that you might see pulling data from all over the place. Last time I'm going to say it, it's all real time, right? You don't need to have that delay in reporting that you often see when systems are disjointed. All right, so to summarize, dashboards allow you to see data quickly. They tend to be very pretty. They really allow you to have a clean understanding of what kind of work you need to do and what's out there sort of in the pipeline, and it'll allow you to sort of deliver work on time and more effectively. So here's kind of the key results. I'm going to reiterate myself a couple times. Scoro really helps you to proactively track ongoing projects and budgets, both with sort of real-time understandings in the form of burn-up charts and project budgets and quota versus actuals and Gantt charts, etc. But also in the form of forecasting, right? Where are people going to be busy? When can we expect to earn revenue? What invoices still need to be paid? Where are costs? All these things are very actively tracked in Scoro, and then we can centralize that across projects in the form of reports, dashboards, and list views, like our project list view we started with. At the end of the day, this is why you buy Scoro. I know that this was by no means going to answer all of your questions when it comes to understanding what Scoro can potentially do for you, especially if you're a consultant. Every use case is different. This is what I do every day. Maybe you'll work with me if you do reach out for a demonstration, and hopefully we can discuss soon. So once again, thank you for taking the time, and please do reach out.